Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we are cracking open a really fascinating set of sources that give us this incredibly unique perspective.
It's a view from both sides of the room, isn't it?
Exactly. We have the journals and insights of a high-level therapist who all of a sudden finds herself swapping her professional notebook for the box of tissues.
It's the ultimate role reversal.
Mhm.
And for you, the learner, this deep dive is a shortcut, really, to understanding the core operating system of human nature.
Right.
We're talking about our deep struggles with avoidance, the very messy process of grief, and the actual mechanics of genuine change.
And we're looking at all this through a dual lens, right?
Huh.
Healer and the wounded. The whole focus is on how people actually manage to evolve.
And, well, usually only in the crucible of a therapeutic relationship.
So the inciting incident that launches our therapist, Lori, onto the couch it's just brutal.
Yeah, it is. She's completely blindsided by her long-term partner, who she just calls boyfriend in her notes.
And he ends the whole thing with this one gut punchline.
I just don't want to live with a kid. That phrase is devastating. I mean, it's not just an ending. It's a total cancellation of the future she'd built in her mind.
And that shock sends her, the counselor, scrambling to find her own counsel.
Rushing to find a therapist named Wendell Bronson.
And what's so interesting is her immediate reaction, just to making that appointment.
Yeah.
There was this instant relief.
A kind of therapeutic placebo effect. She felt hope just by taking that one single action.
Hope, yes, but she also had a mission.
Oh, a very specific mission. She wasn't really looking for self-insight at first. She wanted Wendell to confirm her bias.
Tell me the boyfriend is a sociopath.
Tell me I'm the innocent victim here. I mean, it's a completely understandable desire, right? When your whole reality shatters, you desperately want a professional to validate that you weren't the cause.
Which leads us perfectly into our first major realization from the material.
Mm-hmm.
The surprising vulnerability of the healer.
Mhm.
Just because you're a professional therapist who guides change, it doesn't give you immunity from getting stuck or, hurt by life.
Not at all. The source material points out that a huge majority of professional therapists actually seek therapy themselves at different points.
For their own issues.
Sometimes, yeah, for personal stuff, but often it's just to process the enormous emotional weight of their work. Think about it. They are constantly holding up a mirror to other people.
So they need a space where that mirror can be turned back on them.
They do.
Lori's journey is so compelling because she documents her own very human defense mechanisms. There's this hilarious detail of her sitting in front of a patient wearing a pajama top by mistake.
Yeah, I love that detail.
But then there's the more serious stuff, this obsessive avoidance. She confesses to Wendell that she completely dodged writing this professional contract she had, a happiness book,
And how did she avoid it?
by spending hours deep diving on the internet, even Google stalking Wendell himself.
Which is fascinating because of the connection she makes. It's about her personal avoidance linking to her professional understanding.
Say more about that.
She realizes that her avoidance, refusing to deal with the misery of writing that book, it perfectly mirrored her ex-partner's avoidance in the relationship.
His refusal to discuss his issues or commit.
Exactly. She could only truly understand the relationship failure when she stopped blaming him and started examining her own behavior under a microscope.
So the therapy room requires a specific kind of vulnerability, especially around these tricky boundaries of self-disclosure.
Yes.
So when Lori is sitting there sobbing about Googling him,
Yeah.
what does Wendell do?
This is a key moment. Wendell illustrates the principle of the therapeutic act, not the therapeutic word. He doesn't launch into some complex analysis of transference. He just quietly, wordlessly slides a box of tissues across the table toward her.
And that simple gesture, the care in the act itself, it made her feel instantly cared for. It dismantled that wall of self-consciousness.
It was a crucial move. It got her past the surface-level grief and opened the door to the deeper existential concerns.
Which the source material ties to the work of Irvin Yalom.
That's right. These aren't just relationship problems. They connect to the four ultimate concerns that underpin human angst: death, isolation, freedom, and meaninglessness.
So the breakup wasn't just about losing boyfriend. It was a much bigger panic about her whole life.
Exactly. Wendell suggests she wasn't just grieving the relationship. She was grieving the loss of her younger, more unrestricted self.
How so?
Well, the accumulated limitations of life, mortgages, career paths, all our routines, they make us feel unfree compared to the emotional abandon we remember from childhood.
And the breakup ripped away the illusion of control she had over her future.
forcing her to confront her isolation and, the simple passage of time.
That framework seems essential for understanding her patients, who are all struggling with those same core concerns, just in totally different ways.
Wildly different ways.
Let's look at avoidance through the case of John, the high-flying TV producer. He comes in not for insight, but for help managing the idiots in his life.
John is a perfect example of how traits we associate with narcissistic personality disorder exist on a spectrum. He's charismatic, successful, and wildly egocentric.
His first assumption is that the world is the problem.
The coworker, the dental hygienist, the Apple technician, they're the problem. His demeaning comments and constant blame are just this thick, protective psychological armor.
And John's defensiveness brings up a concept I found really fascinating. Idiot compassion versus wise compassion.
Ah, yes. Can you break that down?
Well, idiot compassion is basically being polite to the point of being harmful.
Huh.
You avoid conflict or saying something true just to spare feelings in the moment.
Which ultimately leaves the person stuck or hurts them more later on.
Exactly. But wise compassion, which is what Lori has to use with John, means you care deeply, but you deliver a loving truth bomb.
You have to confront the avoidance head on.
So how does she apply that wise compassion to John?
Well, during sessions, John is constantly on his phone, texting, checking things, and Lori, using this here and now technique, she doesn't let it slide.
She calls him out on it.
Right there in the room. She forces him to engage with the relationship he's currently in, the one with her.
He must have been furious.
He was enraged, but that anger was the first crack in the armor. Lori realized John's phone wasn't just a distraction, it was a lifeline, a source of his anxiety and control.
And this is where the story gets incredibly heartbreaking.
Yeah, the reason for his extreme armor is revealed.
The phone is linked to the core trauma.
Yes. The true core of John's rage against idiots and his total inability to focus is tied to the death of his 6-year-old son, Gabe.
Oh, no.
John was distracted by his phone. It was a wrong number just moments before Gabe was hit in a car crash.
So the idiots he hates everywhere else.
A pure projections of the one idiot he truly blames and punishes himself.
That is just horrific. It completely reframes his entire personality. The contempt he shows other people is really internalized self-contempt.
Precisely. And the source material highlights this crucial psychological defense mechanism he's using.
Which is what?
John selectively forgets the beautiful, happy, ordinary memories of Gabe, the sound of his voice, the cuddles, the laughter.
There's bad memories.
The agonizing memories, the death scene, the funeral, they remain vividly intact. He is blocking out the joy because he doesn't feel he deserves to remember the good things.
That brings us to our next section, shifting focus to acceptance and grief through the stories of Julie and Rita. But before we get to them, we have to tackle this myth of closure.
It's a very modern, very Western idea that grief has some kind of neat endpoint. We often use the Kubler-Ross stages: denial, anger, bargaining.
Right, but those stages were originally for terminally ill patients coming to terms with their own death.
Exactly. Not for the general, messy, ongoing process of grieving a loved one or a lost life plan. When a relationship or a dream dies, how can you demand closure on the love that existed? It's counterproductive.
It just creates all this unnecessary pressure. And this is where we meet Julie, the cancer patient, whose whole life plan, her trip to Italy, has been canceled.
And she's presented with that famous poem, Welcome to Holland. The idea that if your plane to Italy is diverted, you still have to accept Holland with its tulips and Rembrandts.
And she hated it.
Oh, she was furious. Her reaction was basically, my cancer isn't special or lovely.
But the analogy eventually gives her some traction.
It does. It helps her stop raging against the impossibility of Italy and start finding small, genuine pleasures in her new Holland.
Like working as a cashier at Trader Joe's.
Just for the daily human interaction, it's the small acts that lead to the big acceptance. And her final act of legacy it's just staggering.
It's the ultimate expression of wise compassion.
Applied to her own husband, Matt. Knowing she won't grow old with him, she doesn't just give him permission to move on.
She does more than that.
She meticulously plans her own funeral and writes him this loving, detailed dating profile to help him find a new wife.
To make sure he'll be supported and okay.
She accepted the loss of her own future and focused on controlling the one thing she could, the well-being of the person she loved most.
That is profound. And we see a different kind of acceptance struggle in Rita, the older client, who is just convinced she has lived a life poorly lived.
Rita is struggling with what the psychologist Erik Erikson called the 8th stage of development. Integrity versus despair. She's facing her mortality with this overwhelming sense of regret.
She seems completely stuck,
Mm.
but the sources point to a really symbolic breakthrough moment for her.
Yes. It's so small but so significant. For months in therapy, she had resisted taking a clean, fresh tissue from the box on the table,
She would use old ones instead.
always wadding up old, already used tissues.
Why does that matter? It seems like such a tiny detail.
It's massive. That refusal to take a clean tissue symbolized her belief that she wasn't worth fresh, new care, that she wasn't deserving of self-compassion.
But when she finally reaches for a clean one,
It's a nonverbal affirmation of her worth. It signals she's finally willing to accept care.
and that acceptance leads to action. She pivots from regret to creation.
She starts her own art business, and the name is perfect. It ain't over till it's over, Inc. She moves from analyzing her past to actively creating a meaningful present.
So if Lori, John, Julie, and Rita all found a way to change, what does this tell us, for the listener, about the actual mechanics of change?
I think our final takeaway has to be that profound lesson Wendell taught Lori. You are your own jailer.
It's a harsh truth, but it's delivered with compassion.
It is. The analogy he uses is the prisoner frantically shaking the bars, only to realize the cell is open on both sides.
Change isn't about being rescued or waiting for a key.
It's about developing the willingness and the courage to see that the exit has been there all along.
That immediately makes me think of that powerful Viktor Frankl quote the sources highlight.
Between stimulus and response, there is a space.
In that space is our power to choose our response.
That space is everything. But it's precisely what our culture fights against. We're caught in the speed of want. We demand instant fixes, instant happiness.
A 4-session guarantee to solve a relationship crisis by Valentine's Day.
Right, and we often prioritize medication over the hard, slow work of talk therapy. The pace of genuine self-discovery is inherently slow.
Which is why the 15-minute session itself becomes this radical kind of countercultural act.
It really is. It forces an uninterrupted space for genuine human connection, free from all the pings and distractions that rule our lives.
And Lori found that for herself.
Yeah.
She couldn't force the happiness book for money. She only found meaning when she prioritized her own honest writing.
Change requires prioritizing meaning over the expected outcome or the cultural demand for speed.
So ultimately, this deep dive shows us that change is terrifying. It means losing the old, stuck, familiar self.
But we are the jailers of our own stuckness. And connection and vulnerability, even though they feel so dangerous, they are the true engines of growth.
And the ultimate goal of diving this deep into yourself, whether it's in therapy or just through reflection, is to help you hear the critical questions you were maybe too scared to ask before.
Who am I really, separate from my roles? What do I genuinely want, not what am I expected to want? And what internal fears are truly standing in my way?
We often wait for clarity, right? We wait for certainty or understanding before we dare to move. But the source material leaves us with a provocative final thought that challenges that very idea.
First you will do, then you will understand.
We gain insight through action, not the other way around. So the final question for you is this. What is one small, scary, maybe uncomfortable action you can take right now to break your own stasis, even if you have zero clarity on what the eventual outcome will be?